Why the Russian army passed on the Mauser pistol in 1898. Hey folks, if you're into epic stories about military history, cutting-edge weapons, and the tough calls that shape the fate of armies, then buckle up. This one's for you. Today we're diving deep into the fascinating tale of why the Russian army said no thanks to the legendary Mauser pistol back in 1898. Subscribe to the channel to catch more thrilling stories like this. And don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments at the end. I'm dying to hear what you think. It's the late 1800s, and the world's in the middle of a massive transformation. The Industrial Revolution is firing on all cylinders, churning out new machines, factories, and, most importantly for us, weapons that are changing the game. The Russian Empire, a sprawling giant stretching across continents, is trying to keep up. Its army, one of the largest in the world, is hungry for modern gear, but every decision about new weapons is a big deal. Money's tight, and the stakes are sky high. Enter the Mauser pistol, a sleek, futuristic piece of German engineering that promised to revolutionize how officers fought. Designed by the Mauser brothers, this gun was a big deal in Europe, but when it landed on Russian soil for testing in 1898, it faced a gauntlet of challenges. Why did the Russians, known for their love of rugged, reliable gear, turn their backs on this cutting-edge weapon? Let's unpack the story, layer by layer, and explore the drama, the tech, and the economic realities that shaped this decision. Along the way, I'll throw in some analysis, historical context, and my own take to bring this tale to life for you American history buffs out there. To get why the Russians were so picky about the Mauser, we need to set the stage. The late 1800s were a wild time. The United States was flexing its muscles after the Civil War, building railroads and factories like nobody's business. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Russia was a powerhouse in its own right, but it had its own struggles. The empire was huge, spanning 11 time zones, but its economy was still catching up to Western giants like Germany and Britain. Most Russians lived in rural villages, working the land, while the government poured money into keeping its massive army ready for action. Historical records show that Russia spent about 25% of its budget on the military in the 1890s. That's a big chunk, but a lot of it went to feeding, housing, and paying millions of soldiers, not to mention maintaining forts and ships. New weapons? They had to be worth every penny. Compare that to the U.S., where the army was smaller but starting to modernize after the Spanish-American War in 1898. The Russians were under pressure to stay competitive, but they couldn't just throw money at shiny new toys. Germany, on the other hand, was killing it. The German economy was booming, and companies like Mauser were cranking out top-notch weapons. The Mauser pistol, officially called the automatic magazine pistol of the Mauser system, was a marvel of its time. It promised speed, power, and a futuristic vibe that had military folks buzzing. But as we'll see, it wasn't enough to win over the Russians. The Mauser pistol, a game changer or a gimmick? Before we dive into the tests, let's talk about what made the Mauser pistol so special. Created by Paul and Wilhelm Mauser, this gun was a trailblazer. Unlike the revolvers most soldiers carried, like the trusty Smith & Wesson or the Russian Nagant, the Mauser was a semi-automatic pistol that meant it could fire round after round without manually cocking the hammer, using the recoil to reload itself. Pretty cool, right? Here's what set the Mauser apart. Automatic action. It reloaded itself after each shot, letting you fire up to 10 rounds in a row just by pulling the trigger. Compare that to a revolver, where you had to cock the hammer or reload the cylinder after 6 shots. Big magazine. It came with a 6 or 10-round magazine, doubling the capacity of most revolvers. Versatile design. Some models had a wooden holster that doubled as a shoulder stock, turning the pistol into a mini rifle for longer-range shooting. Sounds like a dream weapon, doesn't it? But it wasn't perfect. The Mauser was heavier, pricier, and way more complex than the revolver soldiers were used to. In Russia, the standard officer sidearm was the 3-line Nagant revolver, rugged, no-nonsense gun that was cheap to make and easy to maintain. The Mauser had to prove it was worth the hassle and the price tag. The big test. Mauser faces the Russian gauntlet. In 1898, the Russian War Ministry decided to give the Mauser a shot. Literally. They set up a special commission made up of experts who'd been working on new rifles to put the pistol through its paces. This wasn't some casual range day. It was a full-on trial to see if the Mauser could hack it in the Russian army. Getting ready. German precision meets Russian scrutiny. The Mauser company sent a guy named Mr. Tillmans to represent them, and he didn't mess around. He showed up with a whole arsenal. 2 10-round pistols with wooden holster stocks. 1 10-round pistol with a shorter barrel, no stock. 1 6-round pistol. 1 cutaway training pistol to show how it worked. 46 dummy rounds, 500 empty casings, 500 bullets, and 500 live rounds. 5 cleaning rods, and 5 manuals on how to take the gun apart and put it back together. Talk about coming prepared. Tillmans was ready to show the Russians what the Mauser could do. And the Russians? They were ready to tear it apart, figuratively and maybe literally. The specs. What was the Mauser packing? To give you a sense of what the testers were working with, here's the breakdown of the Mauser's stats. 10-round pistol with stock, weighed 1,170 grams without ammo, 1,270 grams loaded. Total length was 29.33 centimeters, with a barrel length of 13.91 centimeters. The stock weighed 430 grams. 10-round lightweight version, weighed 990 grams empty, 1,090 grams loaded. Total length was 27.3 centimeters, with a barrel of 11.85 centimeters. 6-round version, weighed 940 grams empty, 1,040 grams loaded. Total length was 27.3 centimeters, with a barrel of 11.9 centimeters. Ammo. Each cartridge weighed 10.4 grams, with a bullet of 5.5 grams and a powder charge of 0.5 grams. The cartridge was 3.45 centimeters long, the bullet 1.37 centimeters, with a diameter of 0.78 centimeters. Clips. The 10-round clip weighed 11.73 grams. The 6-round clip, 4.43 grams. For context, the Nagant revolver weighed about 800 grams and was simpler to handle. The Mauser's extra weight and complexity were already raising eyebrows. The tests. A dozen ways to break a pistol. The Russian testers didn't hold back. They put the Mauser through a brutal 12-point test to see if it could handle the demands of military life. Muzzle velocity. Accuracy at 25 and 35 paces without the stock, and 420 and 850 paces with the stock. Accuracy compared to the Nagant revolver at 25 and 35 paces. Speed of firing. Bullet penetration power. Performance with reduced powder charges. Firing with thinned primer caps to test for damage if the primer was pierced. Firing with notched bullets. Reliability when dusty. Firing with 2 bullets if one got stuck in the barrel. Endurance after firing 100 rounds. Resistance to rust. This was no joke. The Russians wanted to know if the Mauser could survive the muddy fields, snowy winters, and rough handling of their vast empire. The results? A mixed bag. When the test kicked off, the Mauser showed some serious flair. Tillmans wowed the crowd by firing 50 rounds in just 70 seconds from the 10-round pistol, grabbing ammo from a pouch and reloading on the fly. That's lightning fast compared to the Nagant, which took forever to reload 1 bullet at a time. The pistol also held up in some tough tests, like firing with 2 bullets or notched rounds, without breaking. The craftsmanship was top-notch, German engineering at its finest. But then came the bad news. The testers found a bunch of issues that stopped the Mauser in its tracks. Problem 1. A pain to clean. After a decent shooting session, the Mauser needed a full teardown to clean it. But here's the kicker. Taking it apart and putting it back together was so tricky that the testers said No way can regular soldiers handle this without wrecking it. Imagine a grunt in the middle of a freezing Russian winter, fumbling with tiny parts in the dark. Total nightmare. The Nagant, on the other hand, was a breeze to clean. Even a rookie could do it. Problem 2. Too delicate for the real world. The Mauser's fancy mechanism didn't play nice with dirt or rust. If it got dusty or started to corrode, it just stopped working. For an army operating in Russia's harsh climate, think mud, snow, and rain, this was a deal breaker. The Nagant could take a beating and keep firing, no matter the conditions. Problem 3. Lousy aim. When it came to accuracy, the Mauser flopped. At 25 and 35 paces, its shots were nearly twice as spread out as the Nagant's. The testers measured the radius of the circle where half the bullets landed, and the Mauser's was way bigger. For officers who needed to hit their target in a close-quarters fight, this was a big red flag. Problem 4. Jammed rounds were a hassle. If a round misfired, clearing it was a chore. You had to yank the slide back with a force of 8 kilograms, about as much as lifting a heavy grocery bag with one hand. Plus, it took some serious skill to do it right, which most soldiers didn't have. The tester's final call was brutal. Despite its blazing speed, the Mauser fell short in reliability, ease of use, and accuracy. It was no match for the Nagant revolver, which was simpler, tougher, and more precise. The only thing the testers liked? The German gunpowder in the Mauser's cartridges. When they tried using Russian powder, the kind used for Nagant rounds, the Mauser's auto-loading mechanism choked. That sparked some interest in studying German powder, but it wasn't enough to save the pistol. In the end, the commission recommended buying just 3 Mauser pistols. One 10-round with a stock, one 10-round without, and one 6-round for the Officer Rifle School's collection. Translation: thanks, but we'll pass. The money angle: why Russia couldn't afford the Mauser. To understand why the Russians were so hard on the Mauser, let's talk dollars and cents, or rather rubles. In the 1890s, Russia's economy was growing but still lagged behind Europe's heavy hitters. The country's GDP was around 13 billion rubles, but a huge chunk went to keeping the army running. New weapons were a luxury, and every purchase had to be justified. The Mauser was expensive. Not only did it cost more than the Nagant, but Russia would have had to import them from Germany or set up costly production lines at home. That meant spending big on training soldiers, making special ammo, and maintaining a complex weapon. Compare that to the Nagant, which was churned out at Russia's own Tula Arms factory for a fraction of the cost. Plus, Russia was already sinking money into other projects like the Mauser rifle, adopted in 1891. With tensions brewing, the Russo-Japanese War was just a few years away. The army couldn't afford to gamble on a pricey and proven pistol. Looking back, I think the Mauser was a classic case of a great idea that was just too ahead of its time. It was a technological leap, but the Russian army wasn't ready for it. Soldiers and officers wanted weapons they could count on, no matter the weather or the situation. The Mauser's complexity and fragility were deal breakers in a country where simplicity and durability were king. I also see a cultural clash here. German engineers, with their obsession for precision, built a pistol that was a masterpiece of design, but a headache to maintain. The Russians, on the other hand, were all about practicality. They wanted a gun that could take a beating and still work, like a trusty pickup truck versus a fancy sports car. The Mauser was the sports car, cool, but not cut out for the muddy backroads of Russia. Looking ahead, the Mauser's legacy. Even though Russia passed on the Mauser, it wasn't the end of the road. The pistol found fans in places like Germany and China, where its speed and versatility made it a hit. In China, it became a favorite among warlords and soldiers in the early 1900s, thanks to that handy holster stock combo. The Russian tests weren't a total loss, either. The interest in German gunpowder led to improvements in Russian ammo, which helped down the line. And the Mauser itself? It paved the way for the semi-automatic pistols that would dominate the 20th century, like the American M1911 or the German Luger. Guys, this story is just one slice of the wild world of military history. It's a reminder that even the coolest gadgets don't always make the cut if they can't deliver when it counts. Love this deep dive? Subscribe to the channel for more epic tales of weapons, wars, and the decisions that shaped them. Drop a comment below. Do you think the Russians made the right call? Or should they have given the Mauser a chance? Let's get the conversation going.